Reiki and consciousness. A very, very good question was just proposed to me by one of the Usui Reiki Ryoho support and community group members, and I think you know who you are, so thank you very much for this question if you are watching. Reiki and consciousness, is there a connection? And what are my thoughts on that? This is a huge question to be diving into, but I'm gonna do my best, right? So first off, we have to step away from the understanding of what Reiki traditionally is talked about. Reiki, as if you've seen my videos here on YouTube, I'm quite often making this point. Reiki is almost always described as a healing modality. It is almost always talked about from a very myopic or very narrow view on the practice. And there's nothing wrong. Of course, Reiki is a healing modality, but that misses the vast majority of what the practice really is. Reiki is a practice about discovering yourself. It's a practice of recognizing internal stillness. And when we recognize that stillness within, we heal as a byproduct, right? Much the same as when we sleep. Now, I know I've said this in many, many videos. I'm very conscious of that. And I'm going to continue to say it in many upcoming videos because we need to be reminded of it, even myself. As often as I say this and as often as I teach and as often as I practice, which is every day, I still need to be reminded of that when this thing gets in the way, right, of what Reiki really is. So that's kind of the idea of Reiki and consciousness. The way that I was looking at answering this question was to separate the two momentarily to bring them back together towards the end. So let's look at Reiki first. Well, what is Reiki? Reiki, of course, is universal energy or the energy of all things. You can call that whatever you want. Christ consciousness, chi, prana, it doesn't make any difference, right? It's the energy that is found in all things, mind you. Quite often we have this idea that Reiki is just what creates life, right? But that's not the case. So I'm standing on some gravel. Reiki is also the energy in the gravel. It is the energy in literally everything, okay? And so if we recognize there is this energy in everything, well then what does everything mean? What is everything that has consciousness? This is a topic that I wrestle with quite a lot, and I actually, maybe I'm wrong, but I really strongly disagree with quite often how consciousness is discussed. It's very often we can hear, I'm not, in certain yogic cultures perhaps, or certain religious contexts, we can hear things like animals don't have consciousness, or any form of sentient life doesn't have consciousness, or a reincarnated being can either rise in consciousness or decrease their level of consciousness. Quite often you can hear these things like if you do good in your life, then you're going to be reincarnated as something even better. So animals have yet to be reincarnated into humans. This is very speciesist, it's very elitist, and it is, again, it's very limited or myopic in its view. It's very egotistical in my opinion. So what I mean by consciousness is the spark of life, right? We can make a very strong argument, not a correct one fully, but a strong argument that I have consciousness, yet the rocks that I'm standing on don't have consciousness. What does that mean? Well, that means that I am an animated being. It means that there is some form of expression that is moving through me that I call life. It means that I have the ability to take in information from my senses and be aware of my surrounding. It means that I have the ability to create, hopefully, educated thought. And it means that I have choice, rational choice, free will, and so on. Why I'm saying that that is not completely correct to view the rock like that is because I have no way of knowing that the rock doesn't also have those choices or that ability, right? We can assume from a rational perspective that it doesn't have that ability, but that's my own rational thinking and my own limited scope of thinking, and I'm making a judgment call on the rock, right? So let's just call, though, from the sake of our stance as an observer, consciousness being the spark of life or the spark of animation meaning this, meaning that we can be alive, and everything that comes with that, okay? So if we have Reiki on one side as being the energy that flows through all things, and we have consciousness on the other side as being this animation of form, like I have a form, But without that spark of consciousness, then I would be the same as the rocks, right? And if I'm the same as the rocks, then does that mean that I have rational thought? Does it mean that I have all of the facilities that consciousness can provide? Maybe or maybe not. So for this video, I'm going to assume not, okay? So I have a form that is animated, and that is the manifestation of consciousness, but it has form, right? I'm in this body. There is something that it is being expressed through. So this is where Reiki and consciousness kind of come together. If Reiki is the intangible, then conscious would be the expression of the tangible form, or the witnessing of that tangible form. I understand this can be very complex, it can be very philosophical, but I hope you're still with me here at this point. So if we take this formless, yet we're on the other side of that formless nature, we are form, then what are we doing with consciousness? We are trying to understand the formless nature of Daikomyo, or we're trying to understand the formless nature of Reiki, or the energy of all things, right? It's as if there's a veil between the two. And we are on one side in the world of duality, in the world of form. As you can see, all of the form, the beautiful form here on this chilly morning here in France behind me, all of that is trying to understand and trying to feel the formless, the nature of the energy of the universe. Now, that energy of the universe has no form. And so I can make a reasonable assumption, although to be very clear, it's obviously an assumption, that the energy of the universe is equally striving to understand form. It's trying to understand what we are. So in many ways, consciousness in that regard is our ability to listen to the energy of the universe and to speak to the energy of the universe. Our consciousness is a vehicle to travel forward in the direction towards Daikomyo, right? Remember, with consciousness, we have free will, we have rational thought. So we have the faculty, mental faculty and physical faculty, to walk towards a practice that helps us to understand or be a part of Daikomyo. We have free will, so we choose to wake up every day and recite the precepts if we wish. We choose to sit on the mat in our practice. We choose to sit in meditation or zazen or do yoga or whatever else it is that helps you to find that stillness. That's part of our consciousness, and as we walk on that path, we are able to perhaps understand with a little bit greater frequency the very nature of Daikomyo, of Reiki, right? At some point, the two converge. When we witness this idea of stillness, in a Reiki perspective, you know, this is what I mean that Reiki is not a healing modality. When we talk in the master level of Japanese Usui Reiki Ryoho, we are talking about this idea of Onsen Ritsume. Onsen Ritsume means a still mind and a quiet body in simple terms, right? So what does that mean? Well, that means that I have walked far enough with my rational thought, my rational mind, my free will into my practice that even my rational mind and my free will are starting to settle down, right? So the attachments that they create, the direction, the belief, the struggling, the suffering, all of the manifestations of what we believe free will to be, all of those things are settling away. And as they settle down, the mud separates from the water, as it were, and the water becomes more clear. Well, it's as if the water is Daikomyo and the mud is our form. The mud's not a negative thing. It's just that when we have that jar that is completely agitated, imagine this idea. You have a jar of muddy water and you shake it up. It becomes turbid. It becomes more opaque. You can't see through it. And it becomes more muddied, right? I think this is a really good representation of this idea of consciousness and Reiki together in many ways, is this cloudy water. That's a representation in many ways of me, right? So I am the mud, which is the form, and I am the energy of the universe, which is Reiki, and they are mixed together. That energy moves through me. It moves through every cell of my body. It creates the impulses in my brain that allow me to make this video for you, which I hope you enjoy. I hope you're finding it enlightening to your practice. All of that is Reiki, but it has to come through the form, right? And many of you have probably felt this. When you sit in practice, the form and the energy become more distinguishable from each other, right? The form becomes more identifiable. You can feel very innately, perhaps, this is the Boyo-san in Reiki, when you feel a disturbance in your form. You feel a pain, you feel a trauma, you feel something that needs to be healed. And not only do you feel it, but you're fully aware of that thing. It's obvious, it's tangible, it's approachable, it's understandable, right? We can't isolate that when the water is muddy. We can only begin to isolate those things once the water and the mud have begun to separate into their states, into this dualistic way of approaching the self, right? But in that duality, we find non-duality. Because as the mud settles to the bottom, it becomes calm. It becomes at peace. So imagine your mental, physical, and spiritual forms, everything that you surmise as yourself, imagine that all of that settles down to the ground and is finally at peace. Because when they're mixed together, that's life, but that life is also turbulent, right? When it's settled down at the bottom, that is also life as well. The mud is still wet in the jar, right? It's still saturated with water, so it's still flowing through. If we view that water as the energy of the universe, you are still completely sustained by the energy of the universe. However, now you can finally see the energy of the universe. You can see the clarity of the water versus the density of the mud. They become distinct entities within the same being or vessel of the self. And in that space, then maybe we can see beyond the veil. Maybe we can catch a glimpse of what Daikomyo or Reiki or Christ consciousness or whatever it is you would like to call this thing. We can see what our other half is trying to teach us. We are part and parcel of the energy of the universe. So that means that we are both form and formless at the same time. It means that we are both Reiki energy and the form. It means that the form is supported and nourished by Reiki energy, and that the energy of the universe has found a house, as it were, in the form, right? Once those two become isolated and become distinct, then we can learn from each other, right? The energy of the universe can flow through that form once it's settled to the bottom in that example of the jar with the mud. Once that mud is settled and at peace on the bottom, then the energy flows through us without any resistance. This is the idea of being a conduit in Reiki, after all. This is what we strive to do. We strive to allow the energy to flow through us without any resistance, right? Well, when we're seated in a place where there's no resistance, then what are we doing when we witness Daikomyo? We're able to see it with increasing levels of clarity. We're able to see beyond the veil. Or it's as if we are able to finally touch our other self or witness our other self. You can call that your spirit, you can call that your higher self, whatever you wish, right? And here's where I think a lot of people get trapped in this discussion. And again, it's something I've said many, many times in my videos, and I'm going to continue to say it. When we see beyond the veil, this is when we see angels, we have esoteric experiences, we see whatever it might be, deities, we get downloads, we get, visions, we get all of these types of things, right? So what do we do in that space? If we attach to those things, then it's as if we're shaking that jar up again, and then the water becomes muddied. Once again, they become mixed, and we are not able to witness fully what it is we're supposed to glean or understand from that experience, right? And so when these things come up and when we witness or have these experiences, we need to remember that that is us. What we are seeing on the other side of that veil is simply us. It is the energy of the universe trying to take a form to deliver a message to you that you need to hear, as it were, right? So maybe that's a specific deity, maybe it's a specific image or an animal or a memory or whatever it might be. But as that information comes to us, what do? We want to keep that jar as still as possible. We don't want to muddy the water. So we want to let it flow through us as well. Let the energy of the universe come in and experience your form without attachment. And in that moment, then you are able to experience the energy of the universe as it flows through you without any attachment. You're able to see beyond the veil, and the energy that is on the other side of the veil is able to see beyond its own veil what it's like to be in form. This to me is where Reiki and consciousness collide. It's where they come together, and it's how they dance in our world of duality to help us see that there's no duality, right? We are part and parcel of the same story. We are the energy of the universe, simply in form. Now, why am I saying this? Well, first, I'm saying all of this from the comment and the question that was received to me, but also I've written an entire book on this. It's going to be coming out very, very soon. If anybody is watching this far in the video, and if you can help with publication, or if you have any contacts in the publishing world, please reach out to me. It's the most difficult part of this journey. I've got the entire book done. It's ready to go. It just needs to get into the hands of a proper publisher. So if you've watched this far, if the topic is resonating with you and if you find it inspiring to your practice, then let me know in the comments below. And if you, by chance, can help on the publishing front, let me know. Reach out to me. There's plenty of ways to contact me in the comments below. And I thank you so much for the support, as always, on the channel. I hope these videos are beneficial to you and your practice as we seek the confluence of consciousness and Reiki. Be well, everybody, and in Gaosho to all.